Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining. So, in this session, I'm going to talk about exploring the dark side of Agile software development. And before starting, I'd like to do a quick poll. May I know who had experience with Agile here? Okay, almost everyone. So, can I ask who had a happy experience with Agile? Okay, I see 2, 3. Okay, it seems that all of us, we experience the dark side of Agile. So here I'm going to talk about that, and I wanted to have 4 hours of talking about that because I had lots of experience with that, but unfortunately we can't. I'm just going to cut it to 45 minutes. My name is Jafar Shayan. I'm senior software engineer, senior R&D engineer in ABB Mobilities in Netherlands. I've been working in IT for more than 20 years. I've been leading some Agile software transformation in enterprise levels, in different countries, in different industries. And with that, I gained some experiences. In my career, I trained more than 100 Scrum Masters, which at some point I was regretting that why I harmed many organizations. So let's start with a quick history. Oh, sorry, I think I pressed too much rewind. Let's start in a history of the software engineering and software development to see how we ended up here. I think I just skipped the mainframe time, by the way. I think some of you may have experience with that, but many not, because you are younger than that. So around 1980, 1990, the IT departments were like what we have experienced in the IT crowd. Some people mostly sitting in the underground, and most of the organizations, nobody knew that those people exist at all. And they were just living there and doing nothing, mainly helping others to do nothing. But it was changing, the world was changing. The CPU price was dropping, and then the computer was becoming more accessible for everyone. And it was around 1995 when Microsoft announced happily Windows 1995, and then it became more accessible to people, to personal use, and at that point, we are experiencing new era of software engineering because everyone could access that. So it was becoming with this change, we were looking into some new ways of innovation. It was becoming pervasive everywhere. And that was the time that we were experiencing some challenges at the same time. And it was around that time that Mark Anderson said famously that software is eating the world, because all those companies, they were competing with the software, and it was the competitor differentiator for everyone. So we were doing a lot of investments to win the competition, to win the market. But something was against those innovations and those investments. The processes that we were following, mostly around that time, we were using RUP. I think some of you have experienced that, which was very heavyweight process with different phases, and most of the companies, they were doing that with some heavy documentation. Mostly the projects were involved with a few hundred or thousands of pages of the documentations with lots of sophisticated UML diagrams that for many people, it was kind of cryptic charts that nobody understood them. And the timeline of the projects were like this one, for example, the TFS. Every 3 years, you will buy the CD and then install it, and then you wanted to do the migration, you had to hire another company to help you with that migration. So you wanted to do innovation. Yes, we can do that, but every 3 years we can do that. We fix something, we just fix the bug, then in 3 years you can see that fix is happening. So it was very frustrating. But then most of the practitioners, the companies, they were looking into that, okay, we have the problem. So what is the solution for it? And then they looked back that, okay, wait a second, in 2001, 17 software practitioners that they were frustrated of this situation. They gathered in a ski resort in Utah in US, and they were just complaining about, okay, why we can't do better ways, and then they come up with the Agile Manifesto, which in most cases, it was also misunderstood with many people in the Agile environment. For example, they value the responding to change over following a plan. And then in many organizations, they thought that Agile means no planning, which is completely wrong. So it was kind of promising that, okay, it's going to work for us. And then some statistics like the Agile State of Agile report was showing the numbers and figures that was showing that, okay, those projects that you are doing the Agile, they have higher chance of success. So it seems that it's going to work. And by looking into the theory and the fundamental concept of the Agile, it makes sense that, okay, why it works, because the traditional way, we were supposed to do it we were supposed to do it right in the first time, which is almost impossible, unless you are very lucky. But the Agile way was saying that we can do it in small portions and then learn from the mistakes and then find the right fit. So it means that it's working. And then also it was based on the iterative and incremental approach, which is also common sense that, okay, how it works. And this approach actually is based on the PDCA process, which is, from my point of view, it's very underrated. And in most cases, it is not understood correctly, because in many organizations, they just miss the first part, which is the planning. So we don't need the planning, right? Agile, we just do it. So that's why it goes wrong. And it's very similar to the scientific method. You can see that it's also similar to that. It's similar to DMIAC from the Six Sigma. So the theory shows that it's very promising, that it's going to help us. So we see that everyone is facing the problem, everyone feels the pain, and when we ask, who wants to change? Everyone raises the hand, everyone subscribes to that. But then when we ask who wants to change, it's like everyone wants to improve, but nobody wants to change. Because change is scary. Change means you are going to change from a status quo to the uncertain, ambiguous, and risky conditions. But then it becomes more interesting when you ask who wants to lead this change. And then you see that lots of people just run away. But I just wanted to show you that what, in my experience, witness in the organizations, in many organizations, that when we ask them, are you doing Agile? Are you Agile in reality? And then most of them, they respond, yes, we do Agile. They don't say, we are Agile. They say, yes, we do Agile. We have Scrum Masters. We have Agile teams. We have ceremonies. But then when you look into that, how they are doing that, you realize that basically it's just fragile. So it's not a real Agile. But let's check how those transformations of the Agile happened in reality. But before that, I like to just review this statement, which is mostly attributed to Peter Drucker, who never said that. And it's also one of those statements that is misunderstood very globally. He said that culture, it's a strategy for breakfast. And when you talk to the leaders and say, where is your strategy for this change? He said, no, we focus on culture. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't escape the strategy. It's like the Agile doesn't say that you shouldn't have the planning. He stresses on the culture, but he doesn't undermine the importance of the strategy. So to make it fix, I like to focus on this one, which is John Smart said, and it's not easy to misunderstood it, because it says incentives, it's everything continuously. And the other side of this coin is threats. So it means incentives / threats, it's everything continuously, including culture and strategy. So with that, let's look into different approaches that I have seen for Agile transformation. The first one, which is the easiest one, and the less harmful one, is the quick win approach. So the quick win approach is just like you ask the people that, okay, we want to change that, but we don't want to invest a lot. We want to just gain the benefits as soon as possible. So what you do, you just hire some Scrum Masters, you just bring some consultants, you just install the Jira, you have Azure DevOps, and so on. Then you become Agile, right? That's the easy way, and you can report it. Because those leaders, they have those mindset, they haven't changed their mindset, and they have those KPIs that they need to report. So they report in the first quarter, we have 3 Agile teams, and then next quarter, we're going to have 5 Agile teams, and so on. And that's going to be very easy. But it's good, because they don't change the entire organization. So the teams, the people, they were continuing this way that they used to be. They used to do that. And just on the surface, they just changed the titles. But the next approach, which is very famous, is best practice approach. You hear from many people that in organizations, when you ask them, why you are doing this way? They said, because Google is doing that. Why you have these ceremonies? Because Microsoft has that. And then they forget that they need to look into something that helps their own organization. And they are not looking for that, because they have the hammer, and that hammer fits everything for them. And that happens when one leader joins a company with some experience from other places, and then he forces some way of working, some practices in the organization without checking the context of that organization. And that can be dangerous because, for example, when you see someone see a wood fire and then throws a bucket of water on that, then it helps to put off the fire. And then you see that, okay, I'm going to do the same thing when I have a pan on fire, but then when you do that, you won't have a pan on fire, you will have a house on fire. That's very dangerous. And it happens in some of the organizations that I have seen. The other approach, which is very logical, because you don't want to go big bang, you want to just do a small approach. And that's very convincing and promising. But, and by the way, if you start by this, documenting and visualizing your flow chain, you are one step ahead of the others, because normally the organizations, they don't have clear picture of their flow chain. But then what they do is they decide of some teams, they select some teams to do their POC of the Agile transformation, and they start with those teams. And then you ask how you decide these teams to be your pioneers in this transformation. One of the reasons is that they are easiest. They choose the easiest teams because I'm the manager and I have control on these teams, so I push the change to these teams and they have no other option to do that. Or they find that, okay, those teams are less important for the organization, and if they fail, that's fine. But they forget that these teams won't be successful because the dependencies are just ignored. Instead of breaking the dependencies so that they can produce the value as much as possible and having the ownership and control on their own, they just ignore the dependencies. And you can see that some of these teams, they have the dependency on some other parts of the system, which nobody controls on that. And that's one of the bottlenecks that these teams experience, but nobody cares. The other problem is that this approach encourages and enforces the local improvements. So these teams, they are encouraged and they are incentivized to improve the velocity of their own. And they have no full ownership of the value. They are competing with the other teams because they are measured by the velocity that they are delivering. So it's like you are, one of the problems with these local improvements, which I call it, which I think that is very dangerous, is that it slows down the entire system rather than helping to increase it. And then in the best situation, they will just increase the WIP, work in progress, which is slowing down the output because the little wow says. And the worst case is that they produce the waste. So, and another thing is, as I said, because they are incentivized for the local improvement and they don't look into the bigger picture, so you are creating wall of confusion. Although that these teams are sitting next to each other, but they are competing to each other because their incentives is pushing them to work toward their own incentive rather than the entire system's incentives. So in reality, you will find these silos that they don't talk to each other, they don't collaborate to each other, and that's not helpful. When you realize that your system, instead of going faster, instead of increasing the productivity and velocity, you realize that it's slower. When you look into that, you see that people, the teams they are talking of, the problem is from them and the others, and we are doing good. So then, okay, how to fix it? Then let's break these silos because it's against us. And then when you look into the organizational chart, you see something like this, and then you want to just break it down to improve the flow. But if you don't do it with proper planning, with proper understanding of what you are doing, you will end up in this kind of situation which is chaotic. It is worse than those silos, because at least you could see that where those silos or where those handoff happens, and here it's just nobody has full control and understanding of that. But because this problem is kind of socio-technical problem, we can't approach it without looking into the technical details. So let's look into some of the challenges that we experience in the architecture, which wasn't helping us to improve the agility of the organizations. So we were facing with some misunderstanding also in terms of the architecture. One of them was that after we talked about Agile, we said that in Agile we don't have architecture role. So we don't do architecture of the software. Another misunderstanding was that we shouldn't invest on upfront design. The design should happen during the work. And based on that, we just ignored the importance of the architecture to enable us to deliver the value. And we had the legacy, which was kind of a monolith big system, which was called big ball of mud. And it was obviously not welcoming the change, so we had to fix it so that we could just go faster. And one of the solutions was that, okay, to fix it, we need to break it and distribute it. But we ignored the 8 fallacies of distributed systems, and then ended up in this situation, which was distributed mess. So we started with SOA, a service-oriented architecture, which is very promising, but we didn't do it right. Then we thought, okay, it's not helping, let's fix it better, microservices. And then microservices made it even worse, because in some cases you could see that the companies were reporting, in this quarter we developed 300 microservices. Okay, so what? Then the next quarter we will increase the number to 500. So what? Does it help to be more agile? In reality, no, because in most cases, those microservices, they were calling each other, and they were calling that monolith. So they had the bottleneck in the monolith again, but they increased the complexity. So let's look into what went wrong that we ended up in this situation. And I like to start with looking into that from the change perspective, because the change, it was a change basically from the old way of working to agile way of working. And one of the ways to look into that is from Prosky change triangle, which stressed on the importance of defining the success of this change. What you want to achieve from this change. What is the outcome that you are looking after? And then the importance of the sponsorship and the leadership and change management and project management approaches. But in most cases, you realize that the success wasn't defined well. Why you want to do the agile? Because we want to increase the number of microservices, because we want to increase the number of the story points, but it wasn't the reality, so it wasn't clear for the people and the organization. And you can see that it was reported the same thing in the latest State of Agile report, that people, from the people and culture perspective, they reported the culture of the organization, they reported the lack of full sponsorship of the leadership, they reported the challenging parts from this change, they reported the lack of management support, and the resistance of the organization. So it means that it wasn't managed well, that to go for faster. Another important factor, which from my point of view, it was contributed to this failure, was ignoring the neuroscience. And why I say that? Because all of us, human beings, we are wired to survive. From 2 million years, from that tribe period, until now, and into future, we are designed for survival. And that's something that's natural. So it means that we are seeking for incentives, and we are avoiding threats, because that's dangerous. So if we ignore that, which was ignored, we result into loss aversion. So when you define a new change in anything in the organization, in the architecture or whatever, you are increasing the threat for the people. And for some people, it's existential threat. They think that they might lose their job. They think that their skills will be obsolete. So that's something that you need to manage it. So you need to deliberately define the incentives to support the change that you are going to implement. Another factor is from the technical side, and not only from technical, but from the business side as well, is ignoring the Conway's law, which is very important. And that's main reason of the failure in all those software architecture efforts. Basically, in short, the Conway said that the system, the organizations are designing and building the software systems that is mirroring their communication structure. So if you have those hierarchy structure with different horizontal breakdowns, then you will design the system horizontally distributed. If you have vertically, then and you can see that the different approaches in the software architecture, you can realize that, okay, that part of the application was designed during that period of the organizational life. Another important factor was ignoring the human being as the foundation of the systems. Here, for example, this is the one in the Scrum, in the Agile, it is highlighted that the system, the software, the working software can be delivered when we have motivated people that they are working together collaboratively. But if you ignore them and you just enforce inhuman approach, then you won't be able to implement that change successfully. You need to empower people. You need to give them the purpose and something bigger than the work, so that they are motivated and encouraged to do the right thing. And you need to help them to improve their skills and ability to do their job. So we realize that, okay, the change is difficult, and everyone knows that it's scary. But not changing is not an option, because it's very fatal. And there is a saying that, well, also it's wrongly attributed to Charles Darwin, that it's not the strongest species that survived, but the most agile species that survived. So you can just change it to make it something for organizations, that it's not the most wealthiest or biggest organization that survive, like Nokia, for example, but the most agile organizations. The agile organizations that they can invest and take advantage of opportunities, and they can mitigate the risks that they are facing with. So we talk about all those dark sides. I think it's enough. Let's see if there is any hope, or it's just dead end. We should just look into something else. But the good thing is that we have hope, because, for example, in Accelerate, I don't know if you have read that. If you haven't, please get a copy for yourself. In this intensive research, which is scientifically has a scientific research methodology, they found that those elite performers that they are doing the Agile the right way, they have outperformed the low performers in terms of the primary metric, which is velocity. At the same time, they improved the stability of the software systems. So it means that those elite performers, they can go faster while they break less. So it's very promising, and they have shown that realistically that it works. So let's look into what can help. And you know that all these challenges, it's a kind of opportunity, because we know that there is no other way to achieve the business outcomes that we are looking after. But and for example, the challenge is very huge. In 2018, there was a report shows that the poor quality software cost about $3 trillion in the globe. So we can fix it, but how can we fix it? I'm going to share my opinions here. The first thing, I think it's very important to look into the system as an entire entity, rather than jumping through the local improvements. We should start small, but we need to look into the big picture first, and then find the best part that we can look into that. The next step is a theory of constraint. Dr. Eli Goldratt, in his amazing book, The Goal, he explained the theory of constraint very well with some daily life examples. But he rightfully said that every improvement which is not done around the bottlenecks is just an illusion. So, and it can be dangerous. And you can see that it's similar to the PDCA, similar to the to scientific method. So what we can do is we can just look into the system, find the bottleneck of the system, and using this approach, and then start improving that part. Then design an architect for value and flow. Instead of designing for some output, let's look into the outcome, what we are trying to achieve, and then identify the value. That's very important. It sounds very easy, but in many organizations, they miss that. And then you can document it, you can visualize it, and then do the iterative method to improve it. So another thing is the importance of the culture. Louis Gerstner, the legendary IBM CEO, when he saved the IBM, he said that he found the culture is not one aspect of the game. It's the game itself. So without implementing the psychological safety environment, the culture which encourages people to learn, to experiment, and to fail, to do it right next time, we can't implement the Agile. Dr. Westrom categorized the organizational cultures to three categories: pathological, bureaucratic, and generative. If we want to be successful, we need to try to move towards the generative culture. And it's not easy, but we need to design the incentives which are encouraging the behaviors that we want, and those behaviors will shape our culture that we are looking after. And maybe we can look into this model which John Smart introduced. He believes that the DORA method, it's disconnecting the technical perspective from the business perspective. Most of the business leaders, they thought that it's very technical and they just ignored that. So he came up with this model, which is kind of simple English language, because everyone wants to do it better, they want to do it sooner, they want to deliver the value sooner, they want to do it safer, and they want to do it happier. Nobody you can find that wants something the other way around. But at the end, I think there is no other way, or at least I don't know any other way, that you can achieve the agility in the organization rather than looking into your organization and looking into your context and using the best practices as kind of tailwind to evolve the organization from within. You know, and at the end, I think all these methods, Scrum, Safe, Less, and so on, these methods appears and then they become obsolete at some point. But there is one thing that doesn't have the expiry, which is critical thinking. And I think it was missed during all this experience that we had with organizational change. So by that, I'd like to thank you for attention, and please have fun at the rest of the conference. Thank you.